Bulking, you're eating more, you're feeling jollier, you're struggling to fit through doorways, you're getting tired faster walking upstairs. It's brilliant, right? Right? Hi, I'm Wright, an accredited nutritionist, and I help people all across the world improve their body composition, gain lean muscle, and perform at their very best with cutting-edge, clinically backed nutrition strategies. What if I told you that gaining all that unnecessary body fat, which isn't exactly the best for your health, wasn't necessary and, in fact, may actually be of little to no benefit when the goal is developing more muscle? Yes, that's right. On today's episode, we are going to uncover the myth of just how you can go about gaining muscle without all that unwanted body fat. Before I unveil the secrets of the lean bulk, we have to first understand how muscle growth is actually achieved. Essentially, the development of lean muscle is the product of the demands we place on our body and the fuel which we provide to it that allows our body to recover and adapt. The demands being, in this case, weight-bearing exercise. You know, your typical resistance training gym workouts or some form of body weight workout like calisthenics. The fuel that I refer to is simply the food that we eat. While training is important, of course, food is arguably the most influential when it comes to development. Muscle repair and development is a really energy-intensive process, and we need to ensure that we're eating more than what we need to maintain our weight to fuel that adaptation and growth. It's not just about eating more though, it's also important that the profile of our diet is in line with optimizing growth. The composition of our diet is also a key determinant in how our body composition will change. But let's start with the basics. How much more should you actually be eating to gain that lean muscle? Before considering how much you need to eat to gain lean muscle, it's fairly important that you know just how much energy is in muscle to begin with. A pound of muscle is a mix of protein, a good bit of water, some glycogen, some stored fat, and a whole assortment of other bits and pieces. When you boil it down to its energetic value, we can assume that a pound of muscle is approximately 600 to 700 calories. So it only takes 600 to 700 calories surplus to gain a pound of muscle? No, not necessarily. That's the energy within a pound of muscle. It doesn't factor in the energy required to build a pound of muscle. It may be that a pound of muscle is only worth 600 to 700 calories, but it takes much more than that to actually create new muscle, never mind factoring in changing hormones, your training program, etc. Rough estimates based on personal experience and from a random assortment of various studies is that it would take 4 to 5 times the number of calories to actually create a new pound of muscle. I'm no mathematician, but roughly 3,000 calories seems like a nice and fairly accurate round number to aim for. So we divvy that out across the month and you're looking at a calorie surplus of around 100 calories a day. Now I'm sure that's not overly exciting to many of you, and personally I don't feel like it would be all that effective. Reason being, we have to factor in performance on top of that, as well as how our body will adapt to the increase in food. You see, when we eat more, we expend more, either through heat, the thermic effect of the food itself, or from more movement. So that extra 100 calories isn't likely going to cut it. So let's have a peep at what the research says. We really have just the one useful study to look at here, which compared varying degrees of an energy surplus in groups of experienced trainers. They found was that a surplus of around 600 to 700 calories per day was actually too much, and the participants gained a lot of unnecessary body fat. The sweet spot for muscle growth with minimal fat gain was around that 300 to 500 calorie mark per day. The differences in lean body mass development were negligible between the groups, but the differences in body fat gain were pretty stark. You can go a step further and mitigate body fat gain even more by adapting the composition of our diet, and here's how. The nutrient which takes top spot on the podium has to be protein. Protein is critical for muscle repair and growth, while also helping us maintain a more desirable body composition. It's the most thermogenic of the 3 macronutrients, meaning, quite simply, it costs us the most amount of energy to actually use. In fact, it costs us roughly 1 kilocalorie per gram of protein to actually be able to use it. Considering that a gram of protein costs around 4 kilocalories of energy, that's a pretty hefty discount. Our body also hates storing it as body fat, so instead our body will actually raise its temperature or move a bit more to use up any excess energy from protein. Studies show that you can actually overfeed on protein by up to several hundred calories a day and not gain any body fat. Rather, people tend to gain more lean body mass instead, which is pretty cool, right? The goal for your protein intake should be to aim for around 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. You want to make sure to include plenty of high quality protein sources like lean meat, fish, dairy, and even soy-based products too. If you're going down the plant-based route, it's important you diversify your protein sources at each meal. Plant proteins are described as incomplete proteins and typically lack more than one of the essential amino acids. Some simple suggestions for the plant-based protein fans would be to mix lentils with peas or to mix rice with beans. Get imaginative, try other variations, and that'll help you achieve that complete protein target. Your dietary fat intake is the next nutrient you need to focus on. While there isn't much in the way of concrete evidence investigating the effect of overfeeding different kinds of fat on body composition, there is one pretty cool study that used muffins injected with different kinds of fats. Bear with me, I know that sounds a bit strange. Going back to the study, researchers found that the group overfeeding on the muffins filled with saturated and/or trans fats gained a significant proportion of body fat, particularly around their midsection, when compared to another group who ate muffins laced with polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats. These are the healthier fats, the ones that you can find in dark oily fish and plant sources like nuts and seeds. Saturated and trans fats are those that we find in animal products, as well as ultra-processed goods like crisps, biscuits, cakes, and more. Ideally, you'd want to limit these without completely restricting them and have a diet which is predominantly filled with healthy fats. This is great advice not only for your body composition, but also for the health of your heart and brain too. Unfortunately, there isn't much in the way of research that informs us what kind of carbohydrates are best to have whenever we're in a state of overfeeding. My advice would be to try your best to keep your starches and sugars around training, while having your more complex carbohydrate sources as a base for your other meals during the day. Pretty simple stuff. In terms of nutrient ratios for fat and carbs, there aren't any really. In fact, these perfect ratios don't really exist for any goal. I personally prefer recommending a higher carbohydrate, lower fat diet for performance and recovery reasons, but ultimately it really depends on the person's personal preference. This is the real exciting stuff. I have two secret ingredients for you that aren't so secret: creatine and beta-alanine, or as I like to call them, Batman and Batman. So what does creatine do exactly for our gains? Well, our body uses a molecule called ATP to produce energy and to perform virtually every function. Our muscles, especially during exercise, have a high demand for ATP. ATP provides energy through a chemical reaction which breaks it down from ATP to ADP, adenosine triphosphate, to adenosine diphosphate. ADP has to be recycled to ATP to be used again to produce energy. Exercise demands a lot of ATP, so the body can struggle to keep up with this recycling demand. What creatine does is it actually binds to a phosphate group and then can donate this to an ADP to ultimately recycle it to ATP. We naturally have a certain amount of creatine in our body, but supplementing with extra can have an added recycling effect, amongst some other funky cell signaling stuff as well. Essentially, creatine allows us to perform better in maximal lifts, and there's also some interesting research showing it can help increase lean muscle mass through changes in cellular signaling. Dosing wise, you can either load it or you can just take it more steadily. Either way works. The loading strategy, which involves taking around 20 to 25 grams a day for a week to 10 days before tapering back to around 5 grams a day, can help saturate the muscle faster, but it may be an issue for those with a more sensitive gut. It may be better for those with sensitive tummies to ultimately stick to a dose of 5 grams a day and just aim to maintain that consistently. Beta-alanine is just as much a Batman as creatine. They're both completely different in their effect, but somehow wonderfully complementary in the benefits they exert. Beta-alanine raises the level of carnosine in our muscle. It sounds scary, but it's not. You see, carnosine is a buffer for the byproducts of lactic acid metabolism. Lactic acid is produced when we exercise and often gets a bad reputation, that burning sensation in our muscle that makes us pull the funny faces when we train. Well, it isn't actually lactic acid that causes the burning feeling in our muscle, but it's the byproduct of its breakdown. We actually metabolize lactic acid to produce energy too, but when we do it, it produces this nasty byproduct which increases the acidity of the muscular environment. As the acidity level increases within the muscle, it detrimentally affects the function of the muscle and gives us that sense of burning. Having a higher level of carnosine helps to buffer this and keeps a more neutral muscle pH and enables us to perform more reps. Simple equation, more reps equals more gains. With beta-alanine, you'll want to aim to take around 5 to 6 grams a day. Ideally, you'll want to split this pre and post workout, but on your rest days, you can just take it whenever. That's the thing with creatine and beta-alanine. It's not so important when you take it, rather it's just important that you take it. One word of warning though with beta-alanine, if you're not used to it, it can make your skin itch. I advise easing into the dosing by taking 2 servings of 1.5 grams a day and building that up at your own pace. When to eat will really be down to the individual, but there are some suggestions that can be made based on the research we currently have. For instance, if you want to optimize the creation of new muscle proteins, it may be better to space out your meals every 3 to 4 hours. You may also want to have a meal containing protein or even have a protein shake just before bed. We alluded to carbohydrates earlier, but never mentioned fat. I always recommend to my clients to have minimal amounts of fat around training, as this can slow the digestion and absorption of other nutrients which play an important role in fueling and/or recovering from an exercise session. Oh, and don't forget to drink plenty of water. It's actually the real secret ingredient to lean gains. But seriously, your hydration matters. You can't undermine its role in performance. Simple tip for optimal hydration: just aim to keep your pee clear to straw yellow and adjust your fluid intake accordingly. Bulking doesn't have to end in a belly. In fact, if you're growing yourself a pretty serious midsection all of a sudden, you're likely not bulking all that well. Muscle takes time to develop, and having all that extra food does little else but grow a spare tire around your midriff. Aim for a 300 to 500 calorie surplus each day and ensure you're getting in that protein and doing your best to space it evenly across meals every few hours. Time your starches and sugars for around training and focus on predominantly healthy fats to keep the body composition in check. If performance and strength is a priority for you, then be sure to add in some creatine and beta-alanine to your supplement regime. Et voila, the secret to lean bulking is now yours. You're very welcome. As always, if you have any more questions or even advice for other viewers just like you, let me know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe to the Myprotein YouTube channel for more great evidence-based nutrition information.